I like to think that our application has a lot of places which are opportunities for creativity.
Mm-hmm.
The resume is not one.
Mm-hmm.
Please no colors. Please no pictures. Please no
Perfume.
formatting where we really have to go searching for information. Our eyes are tired.
How about Tired Eyes to the tune of Hungry Eyes for our libel sketch?
Tired eyes.
Wow. Natalie, we didn't know you had that in you.
This is Admissible. I'm Natalie Blazer, Dean of Admissions at UVA Law. So for today's show, we are doing something that we have done in the past that I hope has been really helpful for people, which is a director debrief at the mid-cycle point. We are recording the podcast after having done about 3 months of the cycle. So we have a lot to share with you about what we're seeing so far and what we would love to see more of. So for our audience who obviously cannot see us in the studio right now, I have to say this is a historic first on Admissible. We have 3 guests on the show. Not 1, not 2, but 3. So when you add myself and our amazing producer, that's 5 people in this relatively small room. I love it so much. We're getting really cozy in the studio today. So speaking of firsts, we also have a new director on our team as of June, and this is her very first time ever on Admissible, so I will introduce her before we get started. Jennifer Echemendia is a director of admissions at the law school. From here on out, I will refer to her as Jen, since we are colleagues and friends. However, if you are an applicant who encounters her during the cycle, please refer to her as Director Echemendia. After graduating from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law, Jen completed a 2-year clerkship with the Department of Justice Executive Office for Immigration Review through the Attorney General's Honors Program. During the clerkship, Jen also administered the court's active legal internship program, recruiting and supervising law students. Prior to joining UVA Law, Jen lived in the United Kingdom for several years, where she qualified as a solicitor of England and Wales in 2018. She then worked for several years at a firm in Cambridgeshire, focusing her practice on trust and estate matters. I really wanted to say Cambridgeshire. Jen initially came to UVA Law in 2023 as a member of the Graduate Studies Office, where she assisted with the admissions process for the LLM and SJD degrees at UVA. She joined our team in the JD Admissions Office in June of 2024, and our lives have never been the same. Welcome to our first-timer, Jen, and welcome back to our veterans of Admissible, Katie and Roseanne, known to most of you as Director Del Sandro and Director Ibanez.
I think this is where you say hi.
Thank you. It's amazing to be here. It's been such a wild ride already in this office. Wonderful people, and I'm so eager to be here on the podcast for the first time.
It's great to have you, and welcome back to you two.
Yes, hi. We are so happy to be back.
Yes, favorite time of the year, pod time.
It feels like it's been a while, right?
I know, you cheated on us with all these other guests.
How dare you?
Just kidding. They're all so wonderful.
Okay, before we get started, usually we do an icebreaker of sorts. I wanted to turn the tables on you 3 directors and ask you some of the interview questions that you have been asking your applicants this cycle. So, and I did not give you all any preparation for this. So this is, I think, good for applicants to hear, that you can just answer them without even knowing what the questions are going to be.
Gosh, not only giving away the questions for free, normally people have to go on the internet for that.
Take that, Seven Sage.
Okay, Roseanne, we're going to start with
Gosh.
you. Tell me about a time you've changed your mind.
Oh, yes. Well, I think I'm going to pick an easy one here. Before I came to UVA Law, I thought I was never moving again. I bought a home. I was really settled in a place that I loved, where I had like really deep connections and had lived for like 12 years. And 2 months after I closed on my house, the UVA job posted. And I had to have a few nudges here and there because I was like, no, that I should not do this, right? Uproot my life and come to UVA. And, I've said this a lot recently to both prospects at fairs and in my interviews, but if I could work anywhere else in the country, I would still pick UVA Law. I know that's biased because I'm an admissions person, but also I think that this is the kind of law school where the things that I care about are just such a priority. And in a world with competing priorities, it's nice to go to bed at night knowing that you are really happy with the work that you're doing every day, even when it's hard. And so, yeah, I changed my mind about that.
Amazing answer. You're in.
Thanks. But what kind of scholarship am I
Okay. Okay, Jen, what 3 items would you take to a desert island?
Any items.
I think that's what you ask your applicants?
Well, I asked them for a book, a song or an album, and a luxury item.
Okay, so let's stick with those
Okay.
3.
All right.
Question is hard.
I know.
All right.
But she gets great answers.
Yeah, there are some good answers. Okay, so I cheat a little bit on the song or album because I would do a compilation of Antonin Dvorak. Stick with me here. When
I don't know that
studied when I studied abroad my junior year in high school, it was a pretty formative experience for me, and I have very explicit memories of sitting in this youth hostel in Tübingen, Germany, and looking out on the Neckar River and seeing these beautiful boats going down with these weeping willows over the river and listening to that music. It was raining. So I have really strong memories that evokes a lot of bittersweet memories for me. So I would take that because I think I might feel bittersweet on a desert island.
Yeah.
A book I would take, again, maybe cheating a little bit, but I would take the Cairo trilogy. Have you all heard of Mahfouz? He was an Egyptian writer. And Palace Walk is the first one. So if I could only take one, that's the one I'd take. But it's this great sort of multi-generational tale.
Oh, you love a multi-generational tale.
I do. It's my thing. So I would definitely take that book. It's got everything. It's got families, relationships, politics, religion. It's great. And then my luxury item, I'd take an espresso machine with me.
Woman after my
That's
own
the
heart.
first thing that I relate to of anything you just said.
Jen is so cultured.
Meanwhile, Katie and I bring our trashy romance novels.
That's exactly right. I'm going to bring some pop music.
Okay, Katie, what is something you're proud of?
So I am a first-generation grad student in my family. So my dad went to college. My mom went to nursing school, but nobody in my family had gone to graduate school. And that was a very new concept for us and something I really had to kind of figure out for myself along the way. When I came to law school, I felt like being a lawyer was really the right move for me, but there was so much that I didn't know. And this is where I think landing at UVA really made all the difference to me in a way that I could not have anticipated at the time that I was making the decision. Because for those among us who are first generation, sometimes you don't even know what you don't know. And sometimes the people around you have these really deep backgrounds in understanding how the legal world works or just how the professional world works. There was so much that was new to me. And so being in an environment like UVA, where your peers are not gatekeeping information from you, right? So you can say hey, why did you want to talk to that firm versus this firm? Or, hey, let's just talk about small talk with these lawyers. What can I talk about? Things like that really made all the difference to me, I think, in not only figuring out what I wanted to do, but being able to present kind of the best version of myself as I was doing it. And kind of in line with that, I'm also proud that I've been able to make the legal world work for me in a way that really feels true to me and my values. and the values of, my parents and their parents before them, right? I really am connected to an idea of kind of generational improvement. And I feel like I'm an important piece in that.
You are. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
And something that didn't exist when you and I were here as students, I mean, the first generation professionals. So beyond the support that you got just from friends and just the UVA law culture, now there are even more things in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do so many incredible things and have such a strong sense of kind of defined community. And I think it's really just an extension or maybe a more solidified version of kind of the vibe that I experienced while I was here. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, so for folks listening out there, you may get one of these questions, you may not.
Wait, so you don't get one? Do we ask you one?
Well, we could.
Okay, Dean Blazer, let's say you come into $10,000. What do you do with it?
Oh, $10,000.
You can't pay off debt or invest.
Oh, okay. Oh, man.
I forgot my own caveats. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah. Oh, man, $10,000.
UVA Alumni Fund.
New recording equipment for WTJU.
I mean, so I think the probably predictable answer is I would just, use it to go somewhere really amazing. I mean, you guys know I like to travel. This is not the I'm such a good person answer, but it's the true answer. What the first thing that comes to me is go on a great trip somewhere that maybe I've never been before.
Where would you go?
New Zealand?
Ooh.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't think 10,000
Yeah,
is
can we get to New Zealand
I
with
know,
$10,000
I know.
anymore?
I don't know. I'm in
Maybe
the credit card
flights.
point game now. You can
Yeah.
make this work.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. Okay, so thank you all for that. Now on to the debriefing part. We're at almost the halfway point of the 2025 cycle. I don't know about you all, but it really does not feel that way. It's gone by fast, I guess I'm saying. We've done a few of these types of episodes in the past. We've discussed kind of what we're seeing so far, what we are liking, what we would like to see less of. I think there's always going to be some constants, right? Some perennial pet peeves, perennial pet loves. But let's start with what we think sets this cycle apart, maybe from others. And Jen, I know it's your first cycle, and I want to hear your impressions from just a JD admission cycle as a first timer. But to start with what sets this cycle apart from previous ones, both applicants and applications are up this year. Applicants are up by about 25%. Applications are up by about 35%. So, of course, this means we're having more applicants in the pool, more people who are applying, but also that each applicant is applying to more schools on average than they did last year. Also worth noting, the percentage of applicants who have already applied this cycle who have LSAT scores in the upper range, which is the 165 to 180, that bucket of folks has increased by about 30%. And even when you get into the 155 to 165, they're all up. All of sort of those upper range are up. So, of course, the LSAT is just one component of the overall application. Anyone who's listening to this show hopefully knows that. But all of these things taken together, more applicants, more applications, more folks with stronger LSAT scores, one could surmise that this is going to be a competitive year for applying to law school. So, in theory, that means law schools maybe are going to be more choosy when they're admitting people, but it's still quite early in the cycle. This could very well just trickle off as things go along. So I've mentioned this before, but, the August test was the first one without logic games, so it might be that people rushed to take it while they still had logic games. They're applying earlier in the cycle. People who like their LSAT score, are happy with their LSAT score, tend to apply soon after that. So having strong LSAT scores in the beginning of the cycle is not necessarily super noteworthy either. But all of these things taken together, I think, tell us that it's going to be a competitive year. I will point out, though, that we are recording this episode right before the November LSAT scores drop. When I checked the other day, there are more than 30,000 people nationwide who are signed up for the November LSAT. So depending on how those folks do, we could either see the overall competitiveness of the pool continue to climb, or we could see it kind of level off. This episode will be coming out after those scores drop, so I just want people to keep in mind those scores are not in the pool yet. We're just talking about the ones that we have as of now. We very well may be giving a different update in the next season in the spring semester. So as folks know, as always, the admissions process is very dynamic. It's unpredictable, which I think makes it fun for all of us and difficult. So that's the data side of things I just wanted to put out there of the 2025 cycle specifically. But of course, in our office and as the folks who are reading and evaluating files, we're much more focused on the individual applicants who make up the pool, who we're reading, who we're going to talk to. So I would love to hear from each of you just your impressions so far of the strength of the applicant pool.
And I tell you, it is strong. It is strong. I'm so glad to have Jen on board because I was like, how did we do this? How would we do this without her? So I will say they've just been excellent. I don't know exactly what the cause of all of that is. Yeah. I think people are getting great advice. I think they're listening to more resources. They're talking to more schools directly. But I will say I've been really, really impressed so far with the candidates that I have been interviewing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been a really strong pool. I think, unlike last year, and to your point, it's a different cycle every year. And last year, due to the changes so many schools were making, the cycle got off to a slow start. And we were all kind of like, ooh, where's this going to go? Who are we going to get? This year is a very different feeling, right? And so instead of us kind of waiting with bated breath for the applications to come in. Now we're kind of like, oh gosh, when do we know when to stop admitting so that more people can apply? And so kind of experiencing those ebbs and flows of, when we do the bulk of the admission in our cycle is always just kind of a ride.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it started off certainly strong. I think we had conversations in the office right when the cycle opened, how strong the applicants were coming in. And maybe that's not unusual in the beginning because you have individuals who have been preparing their things and getting really ready. But the level, I think, and the quality of the application has remained high, even as we're now, weeks and nearly halfway into the cycle. So I think we've been consistently impressed that quality has stayed there even as we progressed through the cycle.
I agree with all of that. I think for me, there are so many individual people that I have been extremely excited about. Whether you all are interviewing them or I've been interviewing them. Maybe that is every year and I just don't remember it. It feels exceptional this year. And like Jen said, yes, a lot of the strong people apply early. So that's true year to year. But it feels, I don't know. I feel like maybe I have seen so many more people who I think truly are specifically really interested in UVA, that they would be a great fit at UVA. Now, we are expecting with the November LSAT drop to see, many more applicants. So many more great, strong applicants. So we have admitted quite a few people already. It's a rolling process, but we are very well aware that November is going to be a big drop and that we still have, plenty of time to go in the cycle. So for people out there listening and thinking, there are all these strong people and they've already been admitted, don't worry. We're not even, we're halfway in terms of time, but we are nowhere close to halfway in terms of the number of people we've admitted.
You've already touched on this, but I actually think that is a really important distinction, is this cycle more than any other cycle. I think people have not just been strong, but they have been so much more sure about law school. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily specifics, I want to have this ideal job, but in terms of the amount of passion, which actually is really heartening for just the future, I think, of the legal profession, that there are so many people with such enthusiasm for law school. So I think that's one of it. And also just people who are actually, I think, also more enthusiastic about UVA. You touched on that a little bit earlier, but I think that that's absolutely true.
And we'll talk about this later, but I think also just having another director in the mix and having more opportunities for us to talk through people. Back when it was just me and Katie, we didn't have time. We were just constantly interviewing, admitting there wasn't a lot of time to just debrief. But now it's great. It's great because we can really share with one another and there's more bandwidth to go around. So speaking of Jen coming on, Roseanne, you mentioned it might be helpful to talk a little bit about just our process of reading and reviewing files. We've talked about that before, but now that we have sort of this 4-person team doing it, do you want to just kind of give an overview of how the reading and reviewing process works?
So I will just kind of say, like, big picture overall, like, a file is read multiple times by multiple, at least director level or higher people. So each law school does this process so differently, and it is hard to read the tea leaves. And so I encourage you not to read the tea leaves, because even in our own process, like, your application can go in numerous pathways. I will also say that after kind of an initial read and a director read or Dean Blazer reading, that there is like some back and forth sometimes. We will share files with each other for other thoughts if we're on the fence. You know, you get to kind of the interview phase if we all elect for you to kind of move on. Again, how you get to that point can take lots of different pathways, but I will also say, like, please don't get caught up in the little details or the date changes. I promise you there's no way that you are UR1 on the first day and never change. And just because things aren't moving, I think, on your side the way that you expect doesn't mean that they're not moving. And in this process, like, no news is good news. So I say hang tight and just be patient. I promise the process is working.
Right. Your file could be being actively read, talked about, shuffled between us. You are not going to know any of that. And I know that that's the sort of scary part of this process, frustrating part, but we can't possibly have status updates for when, somebody new is reading your file. And I do think, as Roseanne pointed out, we take a very, I would say, maybe not that different. I don't know how every school does it, but we definitely take a very personal approach to how we're doing this. We do want to get each other's feedback. We do care about the individual person who we're talking about. People are not just a number. People are not just a metric. And we really, when you do it on a person-by-person basis, it can take longer and it can be a little bit more opaque. But I think at the end of the day, that's a good thing for applicants.
And, we've mentioned this in the past, like, we're one of the only schools that I know of that interviews every single person in-house. So, like, when you think about all of those offers, they are very much human beings to us because we have interacted with them in a 30-minute interview. And because we discuss things as a committee, like, I don't, like, hold all of the knowledge about my interviewee just to myself. Like, other people have seen them. Yeah. So I think it's really easy for us to put names and faces together or remember little things about you as things go on, because it's a much smaller pool than I think people expect.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about what the pool is looking like, just a little refresher of how we read and evaluate files. Let's talk a little bit about essays. Katie, I know that you have had some thoughts this cycle about the Q13 prompt, which we can also refer to as the traits essay. I think people know what that is. Tell us what you've been seeing this cycle.
Yeah, so this has been something that has been a little disappointing at times this cycle. And I will walk back and say, everything about this process is meant to be individual. It's meant to be personal. And when we designed the prompt to Q13, we delineated a specific list of traits that we are really looking for in our applicants because we think they're really, really important. And what we are seeing a lot of this cycle, and I won't say it's right down to the person, there are of course exceptions. We've read some really great Q13 essays, but I've seen a lot of people who seem to be copying and pasting or kind of just tweaking what otherwise might have been a typical diversity essay or some other essay that they wrote maybe as a starting point for a personal statement or something like that. And it's might be a lovely essay, but it's not actually addressing the specific traits that we have delineated. And in a cycle that is as competitive as this one, that can be the thing that makes or breaks or at least decides whether you move on to the next phase of the process. An essay that is not responsive to a prompt is telling me either that you didn't put a lot of effort in, or that maybe you're not specifically interested in UVA, or worst case scenario, maybe reading comprehension isn't so good, right? But it's certainly not reflecting well on you if it doesn't feel like that essay is truly responsive. But when they are responsive, they are so, so great. And the other thing that I think is worth considering is the order in which we read an application. Applications come to us as one kind of consolidated PDF that the Law School Admissions Council puts together. And the way that the application and then the attachments are all put together means that that Q13 question is the very first sample of your writing that we are reading. And so if you are kicking us off right out of the gate with something that's not responsive to our prompt, you are not setting yourself up for a great read of your application. So please take time to personalize that essay. It really does go a long way.
It does. It makes a difference. We understand that every school now has different prompts. I think last year, everybody was kind of grappling with it for the very first time. And now, people have thought, oh, well, I can just repurpose my, like you said, diversity statement or adversity statement or whatever other schools are asking for.
Or your statement of perspective.
Statement
or
of
purpose.
perspective. We know what other schools are asking for those. That is not what we're asking for. Like Katie said, we really care about these specific traits. Most people do a great job talking about one trait. Maybe two. We are not asking for all of them. We are really hoping to get the person who's following the instructions, who's telling us something. And that, like Katie said, will set us off on a very exciting, great note for the rest of the file. And I agree with you. I'm thinking of a couple in particular right now who are standing out in a great way. Like, I've seen this done very well. But please just read the instructions and follow the instructions.
One other point there, because we do get this question a lot. I think there's some concern about formatting in the way that people are able to write this essay. We understand that we have given you a text box that is not conducive to paragraph breaks and things like that. And so I just want to put it out there now. We are not holding that sort of formatting against you in any way with these. Just use the space in the best way that you can.
And because the list of traits is so wide-ranging, if somebody doesn't address one, it really worries me that they aren't any of those things. I mean, that's what you're leading us to think. Either that or you're just not going to be bothered to write a new essay about it. And neither of those things are good. Okay, so part 2 of the Q13 is like the work experience, family responsibility. Roseanne, I know you have seen people who you think maybe are not making the best use of that space. This is an optional part of the application I really want to point out. We're basically saying to people, hey, if your resume doesn't cover everything that you would want us to know about in terms of how you've been spending your time, whether that's jobs in high school, jobs in college, family contributions, other responsibilities, this is your place to do it. Totally optional. But I wonder if people have been filling it out when maybe it's not the best use of the prompt. So what do you think?
I think people definitely have, but I also fear sometimes that it's also the opposite, where people see it and they don't answer it when they should. And to be honest, ends up being a judgment call. And so even when I think the space is being used poorly, it's a good testament, I think, to how that person thinks of the world, right? Mm-hmm. So I think one of the times that it is used poorly is when people just use the space to brag on more details of things that they've done and accomplished. And I'm like, oh, there are other spaces for that. This is not what the question is asking, right? But I do also see it done really well. One of the examples that I will pick, because I think it happens more often than people think, is caretaking. And, that is actually a huge responsibility. I feel very close to that now myself. And so I'm like, wow, when you think about what people do and their excellent academic performance and test scores, just balancing all of that with really having to be there for people in a way that other people don't have to be. I think that is something that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Jen, this is your first director debrief ever. I'm curious, just big picture, little picture, as general or specific as you want to get. you've been at this, 5 months now on the JD side. Like, what has stood out to you as super impressive or maybe less impressive or disappointing or surprising?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe what's a little bit surprising to me is that the really impactful applications I've read are not necessarily the most sophisticated. They're not necessarily the most polished, right? But they're individuals who are able to really show something about themselves and about the circumstances that they've come from. And that really is just highlighted when you're going through it. They aren't necessarily using flowery language. They aren't trying to employ some sort of really clever writing mechanism in their personal statement. It's just straightforward and really, as cliche as it might sound, from the heart. You get that authenticity from them. And when you're able to see the determination, when you're able to see sort of the drive and the passion and what motivates people, those are the applications that you read and you know these people will be a good fit at UVA Law. So I think that was a little bit of a surprise for me. Just being able to so easily sort of identify those applicants that are able to convey the genuine interest that they have in the law and in UVA specifically.
Oh, that's a great answer.
That's a great answer. And I hope I hope people really take that to heart. Obviously, there's going to be always a baseline level of capability, of academics, of professionalism. That goes without saying. But I think sometimes when people strip it down a little bit and really speak, like you said, from the heart, I don't want to get into interviews too much because we talked about that a lot on the most recent episode.
And you just gave away 4 questions for free.
Now we can come up with new questions. But man, is it so lovely to just connect with somebody on a real person-to-person level, even when, like we all just did to each other, putting someone on the spot. Do I love the answer I gave? Not really, but that's really how I feel. I want to go to New Zealand,
By yourself, without your husband or your pets.
With my husband. Now we're talking. Put the money towards flying the pets over there. So other things that we think have stood out to us this cycle.
I think one thing that I have seen a bit more of this cycle than in prior cycles are letters of recommendation being the thing that puts somebody in one bucket or a different bucket. And I don't know if it's the strength of the letters themselves so much as it is just that, when we're in a situation where, at least at this point, knock on wood, we have a lot of good options in front of us, that can be the thing that puts you over the top. And I know that's probably a little frustrating to hear on an applicant side because that's one of the things you have the least control over. But I think it bears repeating that if you are currently in undergrad and you think you might apply to law school in a couple of years, or if you're still in a position where you're deciding who to choose for a recommender, it really does make a difference if that person knows you, knows what your goals are, and can speak persuasively not only to the quality of your work, but to the quality of the person that you are. I love nothing more than a letter of recommendation that says, this person is kind. This person is a joy to be around. This person went above and beyond for their classmates. Those things are just as important sometimes as them speaking to your academic accomplishments.
Yes, and what the applicant has within their control is who they're asking, right? And so I couldn't agree more. We talked about this on the recent call-in show, but it can be that 1 or 2 sentences from the letter that makes me maybe not going to be decisive in whether we interview them or not, because it tends to be that all the other things are there, but that makes me just extra excited because I'm like, wow, I've never heard this in a letter. I want to reach out to them. So Roseanne, earlier you mentioned it seems like people are more sure about law school. I want to talk about that for a second. Look, it's an election year. The election has happened. They're going to graduate actually in another election year. I wonder how much you all have been seeing people's really defined purpose compared to maybe previous cycles.
I would say I think it's actually kind of lots of things all coming together at one time, because I also think that a lot of the really strong applicants I've seen have actually taken time to try out what they think they want. And then they come to the table stronger because they have kind of this resume, professional experience. They have recommenders who are lawyers who have seen their work and find the qualities that Katie had just mentioned. So I think it's a combination of yes, we feel passionate about, being a change agent, but also that people have taken the time to really seriously consider law school, which I love, 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 love.
I agree with that. I think, every year, of course, we're seeing people with the big picture idea of what they want to do in the world. I think this year in particular, I am seeing a lot of applications from people who are demonstrating a clear understanding of what a lawyer's role is in that big picture change you want to see. What does the day-to-day of being a lawyer actually entail and look like, and why does that suit you? And it's funny because when people don't have a clear idea of that, it really stands out, right? So I'm still rooting for you and your good intentions, but I'm a little worried that you might not ultimately like this as much as you think you will. So it's exciting when you read an application from somebody who can pair the passion with kind of the practical understanding of what it's going to be like.
Somebody asked me in an interview yesterday, do you still feel like you are using your law degree in your job? And the answer is absolutely yes, because I think all four of us are. When you know what law school is like, when you know what practicing law is like, when you know what talking to legal employers is like, you are that much more able to recognize in an applicant or an interviewee if they do have a good grasp of what they're getting themselves into. At the end of the day, we've said this before, but we might love you. We might think you have great, great intentions and you want to be a change agent, so to speak. But we are getting, I think, more careful about admitting people who really are going to succeed, and because they have that foundation and that understanding. You can definitely have a broader idea of what you want to do with a law degree, but that specific law degree and what practicing law is like, I think does need to be there. Jen.
Yeah, I agree with what Roseanne said about people coming in with experience. I think about some of the strongest applications I've seen yet this cycle, and it's been people who have been teachers and seen what the reality on the ground is, and they want to get involved in education policy or education law. People, environmental engineers, people who are interested in seeing how do we sort of address climate change and, energy issues. So I think a lot of people who have gained some type of professional experience then can bring that sort of knowledge and working sort of idea of what's happening practically on the ground so that they can integrate it with the skills that you get in law school. And so they can go on to enter those fields and really help to bring about change, improvement, address challenges that those fields are facing. I've seen quite a few, I'm not sure if you have as well, with students have background in technology and STEM who are wanting to get into things like IP law, and that is, I think, a particular area where it is extremely helpful to come in with that kind of background. So I do think that bringing those years of experience with you helps to develop a very cohesive and understandable reason for why law and where you want to go with it and what you want to do with it.
And for the KJDs out there, I was myself one of them. There are ways to get substantive legal experience during your summers in college, during internships, and to still demonstrate that understanding. You're not in the full-time working world, but there are ways to do that. And look, a quarter of our class has come straight through, and so they have been able to demonstrate that to us. I want to point out something that we've probably touched on before, but we can sit here and we can say all the things we love and all the things we don't like. And at the end of the day, no application is perfect. It's really not. Some get darn close, but in a year that is going to be, we can all feel comfortable saying, very competitive. Whether it's the most competitive ever, who knows, but it is already promising to be competitive. We are discussing these things to hopefully give you that one extra thing you didn't think about, or that one extra thing you're not doing. So is there something that we have not touched on that you all want to make sure people know for the second half of the cycle, if they haven't applied yet, or if they're an applicant who's sitting out there waiting?
I'd like to mention one thing that I've seen some of, and I think maybe some of the other directors have as well, is just resumes and making sure there is no specified format, obviously, but making sure that it's clear and easy to look at and very easy to see what you've been doing. More recently, I've seen several where perhaps the applicant graduated in May of 2024 and they had something they were doing over the summer, and it's unclear what's been happening since September, let's say, and maybe they applied in, early November. We want to know those sorts of things. Sometimes we can try to surmise, perhaps you were studying for the LSAT. I think providing, a brief little write-up at the bottom of the resume just to say what you've been doing, if you're job searching, if you are indeed studying for the LSAT, and also helping to look after a family member. Those little notes are helpful for us to see that you are using your time wisely, and just to understand sort of where you are right now in your life.
Also, you pointed this out, Jen, the other day in the office, but I agree with you. The people are not really doing the chronological order anymore, or reverse chronological order. I have seen more resumes that have years all over the place. And I think maybe some people think they need to organize their types of experience. And so, here's my quote unquote professional experience. Here's my other type of experience, and here's my volunteer experience. I would much rather kind of see it play out as your kind of professional and academic history versus categorized. Roseanne, anything you want to mention that we haven't talked about?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. I think we've hit on most of it.
Or do you guys have one more sort of just piece of advice for people as we're wrapping up?
I really can't say this enough because I think it's important. There is so much about this process that you cannot control. We are in a position where we say no to a lot of people who we read an application and I read it and I am certain you're going to be a great lawyer. And I can't say yes for any number of reasons, but please go forward with the confidence that if you're putting your best application out there, you will land where you are meant to land, and not getting into any particular school has no bearing on what the quality of lawyer you're going to be is. And I know that's hard to hear. Again, controlling types. I get it. But there are just some things about this that are out of your hands, but they don't bear on the quality of you as an applicant or the future lawyer you're going to be.
So well said.
Yeah, what Katie said.
Ditto.
Any last thoughts?
I think I've mentioned this in the past where I got into law school admissions because I did most everything wrong. I just got really lucky, but I was the person who was like, I'm taking a gap year. And I took a gap year during a recession and then went to law school when, everyone and their mom was going to law school, which is kind of tracking, I think, with this cycle. It is a competitive year, right? I'm talking to Roseanne from 2009 and I'm like, hey, look at the big picture. Would life look differently if you applied next cycle, right? If there are things that you can, be more deliberate about or experiences you can have, I think I say this every time, but there's a lot of ways to get to where you're trying to go. And I think so much of the strength of this cycle is that people are taking that time, right? So I think it's really kind of okay to be that person. And I know that there is definitely a time and financial investment that goes into it, but I took this role so that I could tell people think about the big picture, because that ultimately matters more than what is happening quickly. So I know this isn't a quick process, and in a dream world it would be, but I also think that like big dreams are worth waiting for as well. So kind of want to keep those in the back of your head.
I want that T-shirt. Big dreams are worth waiting for.
And I know that's hard to conceptualize when our applicants are, relatively speaking, so young, and have their whole lives ahead of them, which is so exciting. And there is that urgency that now, but being deliberate and seeing the bigger picture, I think, is great closing advice. Well, Katie, Roseanne, and Jen, our newest director, thank you all so much for being on the show.
Happy to be here.
This has been Admissible with me, Dean Natalie Blazer, at the University of Virginia School of Law. My guests today were UVA Law's 3 directors of admission, Katie Del Sandro, Roseanne Ibanez, and Jennifer Echemendia. The next episode of Admissible will be out soon. In the meantime, you can follow the show on Instagram at Admissible Podcast. As a reminder, Admissible is now on YouTube. You can check out all new episodes there, along with some vintage content we're sharing to help guide you through this application season. Thanks so much for listening, and please remember to rate the show wherever you listen to podcasts.